And future doctors. My name is Marlon Noyan. I'm a doctoral candidate, high school special education teacher who has dedicated nearly 2 decades to supporting students in urban New Jersey schools. For the past 19 years, I've worked to ensure that every learner, especially those within diverse learning needs, have access to meaningful and equitable education. In my current role, I manage and implement individual education plans known as IEPs and 504 plans. I've also created academic and behavioral goals and provide direct instruction tailored to each student's unique needs. My work goes far beyond paperwork and compliance. It's deeply rational. Every day I listen, observe, and respond to the lived experiences of my students and their families. I want each student to feel valued, understood, and capable of success. Over the years, I've come to see that my approach to teaching mirrors the principles of qualitative research, trying to understand the why behind behavior, the meaning within learning experiences, and the contents that shapes academic and emotional growth. In fact, my classroom often feels like a qualitative research site. Every IEP meeting, every student reflection, every parent conversation becomes a part of my ongoing inquiry into how people learn, grow, and thrive when given individualized support. IEPs and 504s are built on inclusion and individualized learning and qualitative research, especially narrative inquiry, reflects the same idea by centering the student's story. When I ask students to reflect on their progress or talk about their goals, I'm essentially engaging in participant-centered research practices. Their feedback gives me insight that numbers alone can't capture. My daily work includes many qualitative methods, such as interviews, observations, and reflections. When I listen to students describe how reading accommodation helps or doesn't help, I'm gathering qualitative data. When I analyze patterns in participation or self-advocacy, I'm interpreting data much like a qualitative researcher examining themes in interviews. Each student's academic and emotional background informs the goals that I design, which reflects the same content-driven inquiry found in the case study. Ultimately, I see my role just not as an instructor, but as an advocate, a collaborator, and a lifelong learner. My mission is to understand the whole student, their voice, their story, and identity, and use that understanding to my research, daily practice, and real-world impact that I can have after graduation. Prompt 1, most powerful learning moments. When I think back to these 8 weeks, I've had several aha moments. Those times when something just clicked and made me see the world differently. Each week build on the last connecting theory to my lived experience in deepening my understanding of what qualitative research truly means. In the early weeks, I was struck on how qualitative research gives structure and legitimacy to the human side of learning. Reading the article, Women of Color in the Academy, where authority in the classroom, helped me realize that qualitative inquiry allows researchers to center human experiences instead of reducing them to numbers. And that was an important shift for me, seeing that a narrative and experience can valid data when analyzing critically. By our midterm, our focus on positionality and research bias pushed me to reflect on how my identity as a Black male educator shapes the way I see and interpret student stories. The article, Researcher, Person, Positionality, and Qualitative Research reminds me that acknowledging bias doesn't make a research less credible. It actually makes them more credible. Reflectivity isn't a weakness, it's an ethical strength. Later, studying validity and the trustworthiness helped me connect research concepts to leadership practices. Ideas like triangulation, member checking, rich description reminds me of how I lead teams and students through collaboration. multiple perspectives, and authentic voice. The next article, Validity in Qualitative Research Revisited, resonates deeply with me because it mirrored the open dialogue I try to model in my school. The greatest insight came when I realized that behind every statistic in education are human stories. Teachers striving to motivate students seeking belonging, community, working for equity, whether mentoring youth through youth advocacy programs, advising college-bound students in the EEO program at Kane University that I used to work for, now see that I was already doing qualitative work, listening deeply and interpreting content and translating lived experiences into action. Prompt 2, fascination, skepticism. So I'm fascinated by qualitative research. So how am I fascinated by qualitative research? Absolutely. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't have a few doubts along the way. What fascinates me most is that qualitative research feels alive. It's valued relationships and voices. It gives space to people who are often unheard. Students, parents, and teachers. It looks beyond what can be measured and asks why things happen and how they feel. This approach aligns perfectly with my philosophy as an educator. Learning should be liberatory, human-centered. Qualitative research helps me understand how identity, culture, and experience influence each student's behavior, decision-making, and shows what happens when people feel seen, supported, and valued. Still, I've had moments where I was unsure. Early on, I wondered how something so personal could be considered could be considered valid. If two researchers interviewed the same people, couldn't they interpret differently? Reading Johnson and Bailey and Lee article, Women of Color, deepened that question. As a Black male educator studying communities that reflect my own, I've asked myself, if I share their experiences, can I be objective? That's what happens when you teach in a community that you were raised in. You kind of can connect with the students and the families, and you give an objective opinion that can benefit them. And maybe that's the idea that you needed at that age. The article Validity in Qualitative Research helped me see that acknowledging bias doesn't weaken research, it strengthens it. Transparency builds trust, and that's true in both teaching and learning. These 8 weeks have truly changed how I see research and learning itself. Qualitative research has taught me that every story matters and that reflection is a form of data. I now see my everyday work through a qualitative lens. Every student conversation, every parent meeting, every leadership decision contributes to a large story about equity, identity, and community. So yes, I'm fascinated by qualitative research, and I still question it sometimes, but I've learned that curiosity and doubt are not weaknesses. They are part of growth in both education and qualitative inquiry. The real learning happens when we listen, reflect, and keep asking why. Thank you for listening, Dr. Ellis and future doctors. I'm excited to continue learning alongside with you all.